Good morning, members, and welcome to this special meeting of Full Council. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Could I remind all councillors to follow the Standards Commission Councillor Code of Conduct and Guidance, as well as our Good Practice Guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing S in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute rather than raising your hands. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your phone or iPad. Those in the room without access to Microsoft Teams chat, if you wish to speak, please catch the attention of Nick Evans, who will enter it into the chat. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be taken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep a track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page number and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally using their title, for example, Councillor Smith, so that it is clear who are councillors and who, by process of elimination, are officers. I'd like to remind members of the steps I put in place last full council when considering motions and amendments which are substantive in nature. As previously stated, this will make proceedings easier to manage and clearer for everybody, including the public. I've also asked for this to be considered at the next Business Bureau. Before turning to today's meeting, I would like to say a few words. As some of you may be aware, Councillor Willie Scobie has expressed his intention as a councillor to stand down in the not too distant future. And although we have not formally received confirmation of a specific date, our next scheduled full council meeting does not take place until October. So it would seem fitting to place on record our thanks and best wishes for Willie going forward, and hopefully to get some well-deserved rest. Willie, I know you will be a great loss to those constituents and the wider community. You have tirelessly helped over the many years as an elected member, and I would now like to invite Councillor Dougie Campbell to say a few words. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Willie, you're going to hate me, but you're just going to have to bear with it. So, as we heard, Willie will be retiring on the 15th September, and consequently this will be his last full council meeting, unless, of course, there's yet another special meeting requisition between now and then. You never know. Willie has told me a few times that he wants to leave quietly and without a fuss. Correct. But as leader of the Democratic Alliance Group, I've chosen to overrule him on this occasion and say just a few words about Willie and his career. Willie has been in continuous service as a councillor for 33 years, and it's my understanding he's possibly the longest continuously serving councillor in Scotland. He was first elected in 1992 to Wigton District Council, and after reorganisation he was elected to Dumfries and Galloway Council. Overall, he's been elected and re-elected 8 times, a testament to the value constituents see in Willie as their local champion. He wasn't always unaligned and previously served as a Labour councillor, but after leaving the Labour Party, he never lost his socialist values of equality, social justice, solidarity and cooperation. I'm told that despite Willie often giving them a hard time, either at meetings or committee, officers continue to have a great deal of respect for his passion and commitment to represent his constituents and his grasp of the impact policy decisions can have on the people he represents, particularly those who are vulnerable and voiceless. And that's Willie in a nutshell: tenacious, focused and unyielding. I'm also told that to be summoned to the group room by Willie in years gone by has been seen as a rite of passage for many an aspiring officer. As we all know, he is a passionate campaigner and is probably the first to create a cottage industry out of motions to full council. Whether that be in relation to the A75 and A77 Action Group, Galloway Community Hospital maternity services, cottage hospitals or social care. The list of other issues Willie has passionately championed is long, and it is to his great credit that he takes on cases that aren't in any way pertinent to Dumfries and Galloway Council, because he sees his role as an advocate for the people who need someone to stand up for them. I think we can all agree that Willie provides an example of the values and hard work that we can all aspire to. Even now, after 33 years, he's still taking constituent calls, agreeing to meetings and taking on new cases. And I'm sure he'll pop up at council meetings between now and the 15th of September. He'll be a hard act to follow, whoever wins the future by-election in Ward 1. Willie, Ian and I came together as three unlikely group members, and I'm sure many would have thought that it wouldn't last. But from the outset, we took the decision to agree to disagree, but to have each other's back, which has held us in good stead. Ian and I have really enjoyed working with Willie, and we see him very much as a friend and a colleague. As a group of three members, I can safely say that we've been effective and influential in the last couple of years, and Willie has had a significant role in this. He's someone who often shies away from leadership roles, but I hope he knows that he is in fact a leader. He'll soon enjoy spending more time with his family and his new love for bowling. However, I'm told that his bowling technique is more akin to the dam busters bouncing balls. But he was on the winning team for the inaugural Derek Crichton Retirement Cup, so fair play to him. Willie will be a great loss to Stranraer and the Rins as a councillor, where he is very highly regarded by that community, and the council hall will be a quieter place without him. However, I hope that everyone can join me in acknowledging Willie's service to his constituents and Dumfries and Galloway Council, and wish him a long and happy retirement. Lang may your lumbrick, Willie.
Far be it from me to be correct in Dougie, but it was 1988 that was first elected for Wigton District Council as the Lucknow councillor. And I well remember back to those days in Wigton District Council days when I used to go home and the blood pressure was up. I was totally frustrated. I knew I was right, but I could never get anybody to vote for me. So what has changed? But it was Gordon Tremble, a great friend and mentor, that pulled me to the side at that time. And he says, "You're going to have a heart attack if you keep behaving the way you are, with the blood pressure rising." He says, treat the chambers as a theatre, and you're only there to perform. But make sure you're sitting alongside the press and they hear every word you're saying so that they could report it. So I always took that as good advice, and I hope I've lived that advice. I was trying to avoid this. I said to Vlad as well, and I think we've agreed a date. I think it's the 29th, so I'll get a couple more days, and Dougie and Ian will get you put up with me for those few other days. I think in all my time as a councillor, the finest period that I really enjoyed and got the most out of was when Tommy Sloan was the leader as a minority Labour administration, and that was the finest. It was about 18 months that we had as a minority administration. I think back to some of the councillors, and there was on Wigton District Council, Lady Stair, I fondly addressed her as Davina, never held to title of any description. But it was Davina that used to say, "Willie, when you start your presentation or on anything, at the start I'm agreeing with you, but by the time you get to the end, I've forgotten what you said at the beginning." So I'll try and stick to that just now. But my time with Dougie, with Ian, has been really appreciated, their support, their company and everything else. And I think we have been an effective group with the three of us. sometimes punching above our weight, but nevertheless we survived and succeeded. I just want to thank past and present councillors for their forbearance, and likewise for the officers, for past and present, for their tolerance at times. Sometimes heated, but we've always got through on what I was doing. So I really just want to thank you all. As I say, I tried to avoid this, not realising it was going to happen just now. But thanks to everybody for their companionship, for the support when it was there. And I wish you all in the future. I would only finish on a note of caution. Never mind what I said at the beginning. But during that time at Wigton District Council, when first became a council, they didn't have a committee system. There was just one council, and we met on a Monday, and there was some 40 to 60 items of business at a time, with a number of those being classified as exempt behind closed doors, basically, excluding the public. I get the feeling that we may be moving towards that way, that the number of briefing meetings, seminars and so forth, and the reduction of it. And I would just put a note of caution on that, because you are excluding the public, or we are excluding the public as I speak. And it's just a note of caution that the public are part of that. The press, who very seldom come along now, but the press is part of that as well. So just on that note of caution, I want to thank you all, and you, Katie, for your kind words, Dougie for his, and I'm sure I look forward to my retirement. 75 is a year when I've got to get out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Willie, and on behalf of us all, thank you. And yes, your points are noted, all of them, so thank you. So turning to my next point before we move to the main agenda, I have received an urgent request for an item of business relating to buses and school transport. Having fully considered the request, I understand why the elected member has raised it. However, I have decided not to accept it for the agenda today. Reasons are that this was submitted at very short notice at 9 p.m. on Friday night in advance of this meeting, and would not have allowed for a robust report to be compiled by officers setting out all potential risks and budget implications of the asks within the submitted motion. It should be noted that policy changes should be fully assessed, alternatives considered, and consultation may also need to take place. Without these, full council would not be in a position to make such an important decision. In addition, the subject of the item of business requested, in my view, is in part already covered in our previous decisions of full council. In particular, we recognised under 4.6 at our last meeting the gaps in bus provision that have emerged during the current process and the public concern over the timetables and capacity changes, and therefore the urgent need for improvements to the network, including the measures set out in the paragraphs of the August 11th report. We agreed that the public transport needs assessments for all local areas affected by the withdrawal or reduction of commercial services since June 25 is carried out in line with statutory duties, and we agreed that a review of transport procurement processes is undertaken jointly between the Council and Swesttrans in line with statutory duties and reported to the relevant committee. In summary, I have made this decision that this item should not be considered at this meeting, but I have asked officers to bring forward a report, if the mover still requires it, to the most appropriate committee and to consider any short-term mitigations that could be taken to reduce the impact on the children and young persons. Councillor Dempster, would you like to come in?
Thanks very much, Convener, and thanks for your long and detailed explanation. The reason I waited until Friday was to get feedback from the parents of children who were affected or would have been affected by school transport, and given the volume of representations I received over Thursday, Friday, I felt it was important to have this matter addressed. I don't necessarily need a report to a future committee if the council officers are indeed looking at ways of improving the service to pupils right across the region. But I will reserve the right, convener, in case I'm not happy at the outcome. But thank you again for your explanation, and I'm satisfied with the response and the fact the motion won't be taken today. I've spoken to my seconder, and although he has submitted apologies, he too is content with waiting and seeing what the outcome is and how we can improve services to children across the region. So thank you very much, convener.
Much appreciated, Councillor Dempster. And yes, I have had the assurance from officials that work is being undertaken, so thank you.
Thanks, convener.
Moving on, so item 1 of our published agenda today is our SEDRN apologies and the Chair's approval of members' remote participation. So Vlad, could you please provide the SEDRN and any apologies? Thank you.
Good morning, members. I can confirm that we have 35 members present in total, 19 present in person here at Council HQ. That might have just changed. We've got 16 present on MS Teams. We've got apologies of Councillor Bell, Councillor Young, I think Councillor Wood as expressed there. And not present at the start of the meeting is Councillor Karen Carruthers, Councillor Davis, Councillor Malcolm Johnson, Councillor Stevenson and Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Councillor Hislop.
Councillor Davis is an apology.
Thank you. We'll get that noted for the minute. And I'm also happy to confirm my agreement to the participation of those members recorded as participating remotely. I just see a hand up as well, so I will bring you in. It's not got your full name, but we've got a couple. Is it Councillor Carruthers? Karen Carruthers.
Yeah, just to say I am present online.
Great, thank you. And Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, convener. Apologies from Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Thank you. We'll get all those noted. Okay, moving on to item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest or statement of connection they wish to make? I'm not seeing any hands up or anything online, so I will take that as not. Thank you, members. So item 3 is our Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 3. It's an updated evidence report by the Executive Director of Economy and Infrastructure. Members are asked to consider the updated evidence report and agree it can be submitted to Scottish Ministers for the subsequent gate check examination. Before moving to the detail of the report, given its subject matter, can we first agree to move delegation from Economy and Infrastructure Committee so that we may discuss it? Agreed? Councillor Ingalls, you have your hand up. I'll just come to you in case there's an issue at that point.
Yeah, no, apologies, convener. I noticed that Councillor Hill's name's not on the list and hadn't been mentioned as an apology, so it was just to highlight that she's going to try and join later. If she's not actually in the meeting, I can't see her on the list, so can you record her apologies, please?
Thank you. We do indeed have Councillor Hill in the room here, but thank you very much. Great. So assuming that we have removed delegations for this item, I will just turn to officers to see if there's anything that they wish to add. I have Stuart McMillan, our Interim Head of Economy and Environment, David Sutty, our Service Manager for Planning and Development, Shona McCoy, our Team Leader for Development Planning. And as I say, they are here to assist with any questions. Members, I shall open the floor, but Stuart, were you looking to come in to add anything? No, thank you. Councillor Dorward. Oh no, apologies, excuse me. I see Councillor Dryber has got his hand up first, and then I'll come to yourself, Councillor Dorward.
Thank you very much, convener, and I don't want to change any recommendations, but I think everybody will be looking to share their piece on this particular thing. I want to go in particular to items 4.9 and 4.10 on page 13. In 4.9, the council have paid £13,387.20 plus VAT for the gate check examination. I just wanted to know, is that a standard fee or is it because of the size of the council? And secondly, in 4.10, although it's not mentioned in the recommendations, The evidence report will look at late consultations, responses formatting and things like that. I just wonder, Chair, if an action can be taken as part of any changes that are significant, that they come back to groups to let them understand that.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. I think in practice we have always done that when a final report is being submitted, and certainly I would be really content that group leaders are advised of that. But I will turn to officers to come back to your first point. Shona, come in, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Driver. Yeah, the charge, it's a flat fee that the reporters unit charge. The reporters, I think their daily rate is, there's a set fee anyway, and the same for administration charges. So it doesn't matter the size of your council. As I say, it's a flat fee that's paid. So when we do resubmit, there will be another cost that the council will have to incur for that gate check. And then there will also be a subsequent fee when we submit the proposed plan for its final examination.
Thank you, Shona. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Driver.
If I can come back in, Chair, obviously there's that set fee for checking that, and you know the DPEA is getting paid to do their job basically, and it's them that have asked us to do this. So I'm wondering if there's a way of saying to them, you know, have a look at your costings, because you're actually charging us 2 or 3 times. If this comes back again and they have to do another resubmission, it's going to cost again the council. So I just wonder if there's something we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. I appreciate, I mean, there's a lot of work on both sides of this one, but I don't know if there's any comments or if that is a point that's maybe been raised nationally across local authorities, but I'll maybe turn to Stuart to respond. Thanks.
Yes, I think there's an issue of frustration there with the system where the DPA do seek full cost recovery for their time, and that is it is then the local authorities that meet all of those costs. And it is a frustration if this process drags out. So it is incumbent on all of us, including the reporters unit, to be able to make to express very clearly what it is they want to see in terms of their response to the evidence report that was prepared, so that we can clearly go back to them and it does not prolong the process. But yes, I think it's a standard issue across the whole of Scotland, so it would be something relevant to raise at a national level.
Thank you. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Councillor Driver. Councillor Dorward, I'll come to you, please.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, members. Thank you for the report and again for the work that's gone into the production of this LDP evidence report, which is, as I understand, a new iteration from Scottish Government in terms of local planning. Question specifically on 3.3 in terms of slippage. I note that the reporter's assessment came back on the 1st of April, and in 3.3 you're talking about calling the special full council because between the 1st of April and 26th of June there wasn't enough time to bring this to full council on 26th of June. For me, that's a fair amount of time to do that. So I'm just wondering why in 3.3 you say it's not possible to have addressed the reporter's recommendations between the 1st of April and 26th of June to bring them back to full council at that point in time, please.
Thank you for that one. I'll come to yourself, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, there's a considerable amount of work which was required, that we had to go through all of the recommendations of the reporters, identify what issues needed to be addressed and then address that, and then go out to consultation with all the parties as well. And the lead-in time for full council is such that we really needed to have had everything done basically in 2 months, which wouldn't have been practical, which is why equally we didn't want to let it drag on until October. So that was why the request was put in for the meeting, because we're very conscious of the timescale. We do not want to have any more delay than we absolutely have to, hence the request. But it just wasn't unfortunately viable to get all that work done within the time.
I'll let you come in back.
Thank you, Convener. Is that a capacity issue or a timing issue? You said it wouldn't have been practicable or practical to do it, or viable. Why wouldn't it have been viable or practical? You talked about engaging with stakeholders. I totally understand that, but it's quite a significant amount of time. I would say for a group to produce this report in those timescales. Thank you.
Yeah, just reinforce what David was saying there, that for some of these changes we've had to engage with several parties, several stakeholders. They've needed time. Some of those have been government key agencies such as SEPA, Scottish Environment Protection Agency, Homes for Scotland, and they have needed time themselves to come back to us. I would also like to point out that we think we've been quite quick in turning this round. For example, Fife Council, who have just resubmitted, they took over a year to resubmit for their gate check. So we feel we've been quite quick, and we have agreed with the reporters unit that really what we're focusing on are the points that were set out in their recommendations. So we could have taken a lot and gone into much more detail, but we've tried to be proportionate and keep to the scale. So I understand the frustration, but we wanted as well to give those key agencies and external parties the opportunity to respond to us, so as well in turn we can demonstrate to the reporter that we have sufficiently engaged and taken those views into account.
Thank you. Do you want to come back again, Councillor Dorward? I appreciate there are external governance issues that we need to be mindful of.
Which is what I'm going to talk about. Thank you, Convener. It's not frustration, it's just trying to ascertain what the issues were, because they're not actually apparent in the report, so that's been really useful, and thank you for the full and comprehensive answer. If I could ask another question, Convener, rather than, if that's okay, if you permit me to ask one more question?
Yes, if you've got any other questions,
so
we'll
in terms
take
of
them
governance,
together.
effectively, and you're right in saying the Special Full Council was called in plenty of time. My frustration probably in this sense is why wasn't the agenda item given out until Friday? Why wasn't it given out along with the papers and waited till Friday for agenda item 1 to be passed to councillors for reading? Because that is actually the gate check notification section assessment report from the reporters, which wasn't actually issued until Friday, which is quite challenging for councillors to assimilate that if they're not around at the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll maybe turn to Shona. Shona's going to come in and respond to that one. Thank you.
Being totally honest, Councillor Dorwood, I forgot to attach it when I submitted the committee report. So I was so intent on getting the committee report and the actual evidence report to governance. I'll hold my hands up, and it was a genuine error that I forgot to submit. Apologies.
So no, it's not a blame thing, and I thank you for being honest. It's a governance issue, so there are checks and balances along the way. It isn't just you forgetting to submit an attachment. There's also a governance issue there, which I'm talking about, not a specific officer issue of forgetting things. There's a whole issue there about governance and actually making sure that papers, when they go out, have all the requisite parts of them. So it's not a blame thing, but thank you for being honest and candid about that, but I wouldn't consider that your fault. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, and absolutely, I think we do need to always reflect on our checks and balances in terms of governance, and certainly as business meetings that we have, we ensure that all of the documents are there, but absolutely points made. I don't see any other hands up in the room, or, oh, Leader, I'll bring you in, please.
Thanks, Convener. So I'd read the appendix with a bit of interest, just in terms of it highlighted the areas where we needed to supply more evidence, and obviously these were the recommendations. So it's just in the body of the actual latest submission, there's a couple of areas where I would welcome a little bit of assurance or clarification, if that's okay, and it's just around, so page 38, it talks about community facilities, and this is all around the kind of infrastructure first side of things, where there was a number of elements of that which we're seeking a bit more evidence about why, to support our submission. So it's really just to understand, are we confident that we've now got that evidence referenced in terms of community facilities, particularly around health and social care facilities? There was mention about GP facilities. so it's really to get that assurance. Also, there's a little bit about energy developments going forward, particularly around, I think it's page 115, and it's about what that looks like for the future. Again, I think that's something we need to maybe bottom out, but I'm conscious that the community wealth building element maybe isn't, it's about that cross-referencing of the different priorities that we have, so how do we tie in those priorities to getting the maximum value of energy developments in the region rather than just the extraction value, if that makes sense. So I'm just wondering if you can maybe speak to that a little bit. Thank you.
Shona, come in, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Thompson. Yeah, with regard to actual community facilities, what we've done in the evidence report this time is identify that as an evidence gap. But when I'm talking about community facilities, what I mean is village halls, bus stops, that kind of thing. That's work that we will be doing as part of the next stage, which is getting into the detail of sites, settlements, our settlement hierarchy, and those are all pieces of work that we will look to engage. I think the previous report we brought back to, might have been Economy and Infrastructure Committee, was we spoke about member officer working groups. So those are the things that we will bring back and speak to members on a ward basis about. In terms of the health and social care element, we've actually had incredibly good engagement going forward with the NHS and the Health and Social Care Partnership. So they are now fully involved with us going forward, and that relationship between future development and healthcare provision. I think within the evidence report we've been able to provide the information, hopefully, that the reporter is after in terms of general practice provision, which is actually a very complicated area. And then there's also the other side of it in terms of pharmacies, opticians, dentists, all of that. A lot of that is provided privately. So as I say, we're now speaking to the right people and they're speaking to us in terms of health and social care. Energy development, again, in the updated schedule for that one, Schedule 5, I think we've been a lot clearer this time in that we are recognising that we've got the national policy on energy and the government intention for renewable energy development going forward. But we're also putting down a marker to say that in Dumfries and Galloway we feel we also need a local policy for that level of granularity. I'm going to borrow a word from David. You know, round about the impact we have locally to do with our landscape. We have dark skies, we have Estill Muir, we have a number of issues that can't be reflected in the national framework. So that's why we say we want to develop a local policy. And there's a lot going on at the national level in terms of renewable energy developments. It's constantly changing, but also the issues with connection to the national grid. So we, in terms of the evidence report, we are required to put down markers and, as it says, identify what the implications are for the proposed plan. So hopefully we've done that. Was it one community development?
Yeah, so I think it was, I suppose that cross-linking of community wealth building tied in, because these policies interact with each other, if you like, so it's a bit about that. And just on the GPs, I accept the fact that, I think it mentions in the report that we can't get access to certain information, but if it's infrastructure first, presumably the working group will be able to tease out some of these developer contribution issues. I know we've raised the point in the past about what mechanism can we do that for health and social care. It's maybe not straightforward. But the other point, while you're thinking about the community wealth building bit, is on page 50 it talks about cross-boundary issues, and it focuses in on the energy as the primary one, and while it references A75, A77, etc. elsewhere in the report, I would suggest, if it's possible, I mean, is that captured appropriately, that A75, 76, A7, A708, all of these have cross-border connectivity implications, if you like, with other local authority areas in Cumbria, for example, in England. So would that be classed as a cross-boundary issue? Because it does seem to be absent there, even though it's referenced elsewhere in the report. So it's really, again, a sense check on that one. Thank you.
Shona.
Yeah, thank you for that. In terms of community wealth building, yeah, I think it's at the time when we wrote that schedule for consideration by full council back in December. We'd engaged with South of Scotland Enterprise and Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway and other relevant officers across the council. So strategies were very much at early stages there. It's not one that the reporter has particularly commented on, so we haven't really updated that schedule. But again, it's a bit like the health and social care. We feel we're speaking to the right people and engaging the right people. And when we come to draft the proposed plan, I think that's where it will be clearer how all these elements all interlink and all interrelate. And as you say, we have updated the section as well on developer contributions and hopefully how all that can tie in. But coming back to the GP one, it is a very complicated issue in how the whole contracts are structured. And as I say, the people we're speaking to in the NHS are keeping us right on that. And we understand they're currently undertaking their own consultation on GP provision and GP structure. So we'll try and keep it as up to date as we can. And in terms of the cross-boundary one and the roads, we'll need to take that away and consider how we can reflect that. But bearing in mind what Councillor Dryber asked at the start, for all the political groups to see the final version, you'll be able to see how we address that when we take it away.
Thank you very much, Shona, and I guess I would just build on that plea of when you are circulating that, just to highlight where you have in a similar way to paragraph 4.7, which is really helpful to the report. I have various speakers now looking to come in, so I will come to Councillor Scobie, and then I've got Councillor Marshall, Councillor Jameson and Councillor Beretti are all on my list, but Councillor Scobie, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm pleased to hear the leader, Stephen Thompson, refer to A77, A75, and that the document does pick it up in terms of the community well-being. And I think there is opportunity for this in terms of cross-boundary when we look at the growth deals and future growth deals, monies that could come from UK government, to look at how we may work or how it could be possible to work with South Ayrshire Council or indeed East Ayrshire Council in terms of the A76, in terms of the work that's needed on these three triangular trunk roads that are so crucial to the economy of our region and South Ayrshire, East Ayrshire. So it'd be interesting to see how that could be developed under the LDP3. Again, reference has been made by the leader in terms of the Health and Social Care Partnership, and I would hope that the LDP3 could look at the possibility of the development of care villages. That really is a big issue in other authorities, and indeed 5, I believe, have got 4 care villages in existence, and yet we seem to be far behind them in terms of what could be there. And only last night on BBC Scotland News, the way that the Borders have looked at garages, and they turned garages into what the community want, elderly people, one apartment properties. So there's opportunity there under social care, but the care villages to me is a big miss. An opportunity that we very much have missed. I'm looking at 4.2 of the report, where it refers to proposed local development plan, looks at where development should take place. And again, I would have loved to have seen it in LDP2, that relaxation of some of our planning regulations to be relaxed, to deal with the housing crisis emergency that we're currently in, and will be in for the foreseeable future unless we start looking at getting more buildings, more properties, new build, and etc. brought on. The document, the evidence report, is a pretty hefty document, hard to absorb, take in everything that's there. But I've looked at one in particular, and looking at page 36 that refers to the small building groups and the percentage over the years, where I think it's only 2021 it increased to 5%. I would hope that in housing terms, not only do we need new build, but to look at small building groups. I've got one in just outside Stranraer in terms of Solburn, where we've given permission for one house and so forth, but yet there's a cluster of houses in there that just lends itself for the small building group. And to look at, when we're looking at the planning applications, to look empathetically at the applications that come forward. I would hope that the LDP3 would recognise that. And really, I'm just looking for that assurance, knowing that I'll not be there. I'll just say to Stephen that I will be about for the 77 as an action group, and that's the type of thing we are looking for on the 77, 75 and the 76. If our economy is ever going to grow and develop, and that we move away from the forgotten corner of Scotland into something that is quite prosperous. So I'm just looking for those assurances in the LDP3 that they will be there. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. I'll come to yourself, Shona. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Scobie. In terms of the housing aspects, hopefully the fact that on Special Council today we've got the evidence report and also the LHS strategy, which I think hopefully demonstrates that close working there is between and the relevance of the two documents together. So in terms of care villages, yes, certainly that's something that we will be looking to explore. I think, you know, we've got the kind of data and the evidence that's showing where the demographics of Dumfries and Galloway are going. So it's not certainly not off the table. It's that delivery element of it as well. So hopefully with the conversations we're having through, you know, groups set up through delivery of the local housing strategy and development of the local development plan, we will hopefully get to a deliverable proposition for that. Certainly aware of the garages, and Jamie might be able to speak on that in Scottish Borders, but I think it's something here we are looking at exploring. Again, all options are sort of on the table. You can see, as you referred to on page 36, that we do have, you know, housing development across all levels of our settlement hierarchy. You know, the majority of it is within those bigger settlements, but we do make provision from isolated dwellings to small building groups to villages. Appreciate it might not be as much as some members might want, but we have said within the evidence report that we will be again looking to give a local flavour to the national planning framework policy on rural housing for what's right for our region. So again, hopefully I can give Councillor Scobie those assurances that in his retirement will pick these up and hopefully run with them.
Thank you. Willie, were you on?
Yeah, just on one point that was mentioned there about the care villages and how this is going to be looked at positively. I think myself and Graham Foster spoke to Jeff Ace back in 2010, I believe it was. It's been that long ago, but we haven't developed in the 15 years or more the whole idea of care villages that are very much needed for people who are either trapped in hospital, on delayed discharge, can't get out, and yet they can't return to their own properties because they're not suitable for them. So it's something, you know, I hope it doesn't take us long. As from 2010, it was Jeff Ace that thought it was a great idea, but it never has developed from there, from 2010. So I hope that it will move on apace rather than wait another 15 years before we actually see some development. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. I've got Jamie here who's here to speak to the next report, but he's indicated that he would like to come in on that point just to respond, and then I will come to Councillor Marshall online. Jamie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Scobie, for the queries. In terms of the care villages, we have really improved our working relationships with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership over recent times, and the NHS. We have a number of working groups underway that the NHS are leading on some of those as well, and aids and adaptations, the potential for care villages. Some projects have been agreed by members for inclusion in the Strategic Housing Investment Plan that really align very well with that agenda. So for assurance, that is something that very much is in progress, is underway. As Shona mentioned, they've been heavily involved in the development of the local development plan as well. And we are seeing a real improvement in the working relationships. Members will recall the Housing Emergency Action Plan also set out our commitments to work even closer with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership. On the garages, I'm sure members are also aware of the South Scotland Housing Action Plan. We work really closely with Scottish Borders Council to look at innovative approaches to solving the housing crisis. We have a number of projects that we're also looking at innovative approaches to construction in Dumfries and Galloway. All options are being explored, and Julia Malloy, who is the Chief Executive at Scottish Borders Housing Association, the organisation that developed those garages, sits on the Strategic Action Group for Housing, which sits right across the south of Scotland. So we are identifying every opportunity we possibly can to try and improve and speed up the provision of more homes.
Thank you, Jamie. So I will turn to Councillor Marshall next.
Thanks, Convener. My observations are mainly around about 4.3 and 4.4 on page 8. And it says in the first sentence of 4.3, you know, that the evidence report is a new requirement under new legislation. I'm just wondering, when you look at the table, I mean, has there been enough support from the Scottish Government? I know that they've provided the local development planning guidance, but has there been other support that's been offered out to officers responsible for putting together the evidence report? Because when you look at 4.4, I think of the 14, I think only 5 successfully made it through first time. 6 have to resubmit, and I think Glasgow have got through, and there's 3 that are still being waiting. So I take it as well the other 18 local authorities have still to submit an evidence report. But from the evidence report that we've got back, it seems to be it's quite extensive, quite comprehensive. There's a lot of things that they're asking for, and I'm just wondering, is that, and you may not know this question, but has that been similar with the other local authorities that have had to resubmit? It just seems it's there could be learning lessons from you know, this being the first time. And also just in 2.3, and I think Councillor Dryburgh maybe touched on it, but with regards to authorising the interim head of economy and development, I've got no problem with that, but and obviously the format and etc., that's no problem, but I think any late consultation responses that are included, if members could, you know, if there are any, if members could be made aware of those after or before the submission.
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. I'll come to David on those points. Thanks.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, it's a moot point as to the change in legislation. This came around from the 2019 Act. It is a completely new phase that we have to go through right at the outset. I suppose it's one of these things that we've never really been through this process. No authority has. So there's going to be an element of learning. Hopefully when it comes to LDP4, then it will be a lot smoother process. The very fact that quite so many have not got through, and you know, we're talking about authorities such as Glasgow and Fife, which are highly regarded authorities as well in terms of planning, does set a few alarm bells ringing, I have to be honest. We did have to wait quite a while before we got the guidance from the Scottish Government on this, and I suspect if you were to ask individual members of the team their view on that question, they would maybe struggle to give a diplomatic answer. But yeah, it is a situation that we're trying to make the best of. I think across Scotland there's views on just how much assistance has been given. But we are where we are. We've got the evidence report, hopefully okay with yourselves now, addressing the matters which the reporter has raised. It probably is worth just stressing again in paragraph 4.6 the schedules, which are the ones that we've looked at. So we haven't gone back to reinvent the wheel. These are the ones that the reporter particularly wanted us to focus on, and these are the ones that we have focused on. I think even within that, you could boil that down to 1, 5 and 11 are the ones which we've provided an awful lot more detail on. Sorry, what was Councillor Marshall? Could you remind me of the second point you raised? Oh yes, putting it back through the parties. No problem with that at all. we'll make sure that's done before we send it off.
Thank you. Hopefully that just answers your questions, Councillor Marshall.
Chair, just, yeah, and I think Dave's been quite diplomatic, and there obviously has been problems, you know, with this as well. So just seeking assurance that hopefully there is some sort of feedback mechanism for the local authorities to feed in maybe the feedback, you know, of how they found this new requirement for an evidence report, because I think it is an ideal opportunity to actually, for the Scottish Government to learn from that.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. I can see lots of nods from officers on the room here, and certainly there are always national consultations going on, so any consultations nationally taking place, obviously we would want to contribute to that going forward, but thank you for those comments. I have Councillor Jameson next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I refer you to page 216 and onwards to 225. First, a word of genuine commendation. The work that the education, skills, community well-being officers have done on the learning estate is incredible. And this is just a small, these few pages and few graphics just give a wee example of how much thought and work's gone into that, and it's been incredibly helpful for members. I have no criticism at all of that. I've just drawn the attention that a lot of the information that comes forward and it reaches the headlines is the demographics, and it's really pleasing to see that this report goes beyond the demographics while highlighting lower numbers of pupils. It's also included the Scottish Government's Learning Estate Strategy, which includes 6 elements, which includes community, the National Improvement Framework, etc., etc. So my observation and my request is that this is probably the top of the education, skills and community well-being agenda. It's highly relevant, and the fact that it's in this document recognises that. So hopefully we can go forward, consider all the elements in this complex area so that it's included in the plan within the context of both education, community, etc., and not overly concentrated on the demographics.
Thank you. I'm seeing nods. I'm not sure if there's a specific point, but Shona, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just thank Councillor Jameson for that, and I would bring the attention to the paragraph at the end of page 225, where we make it clear that the local development plan informs and is actually informed by the learning estate strategy. So again, part of the infrastructure group, but we're working very closely with our colleagues in education to understand, because as you appreciate, it's a very constantly changing position, so we have that close working relationship.
Thank you, Shona. Were you wanting to come back, Councillor Jameson?
I actually highlighted in my own notes that last paragraph, and once again it highlights demographics, but nothing else. And I know that's, I'm nitpicking there, but it's really, having discussed this at length with the education team, it's much more complex than purely demographics. And to be fair to the report, apart from that paragraph, it does highlight all the elements that will be considered in the learning estate. So it's just to ensure that we're not basing everything on numbers.
Thank you, and I think we've had that confirmation. But Gillian, I see your hands, your camera's come on, so I will come to you. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Good morning, members. I just to reassure that we work closely with colleagues in the planning team, and they're part of the discussions involved in the school estate strategy. So just to reassure Councillor Jimison and Vice Chair that that's the case. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Councillor Beretti, I'll come to yourself next, please.
Thank you, Convener. It was interesting that David said element of learning, and Shona said granularity in the report, referring to some of the things that have been going on in this report. No surprises when I'm about to say photovoltaics. Now, throughout the report, I know that evidence or wording has been used on solar, And a lot of the renewable energy material or information is about large scale, so turbines, large solar farms. But using Shona's granularity, photovoltaics is something which in this region should be a priority, because we are the only region of Scotland where we had the highest irradiation levels in Scotland. So every single location can be used. Now, although it's not classified, but the sun is a natural capital, so it should be part of that strategy of net zero. I noticed that on page 124, there's the inverted triangle with the car at the bottom. Now, we've moved on from the last few years when these reports and these things were put together. There is no doubt from the market point of view that photovoltaics is the single quickest, easiest, cheapest means of producing energy everywhere. And I'm just wondering whether or not we can have that granularity in this. Small businesses, domestic, medium-sized businesses, larger businesses, that maybe I think should be captured a little bit more. So I would like to see what the reasoning or the thinking is behind this.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. I'll maybe turn to either Shona or David or Stuart. Who would like to come in on that one?
Thanks, Councillor Beretti. So I think we exactly recognise the issue that you're presenting there. I think our collective struggle is in the context of NLDP and planning policy, for example, is essentially setting out what the forward thinking then in terms of policy on that is, because you're talking about a granularity of things on individual roofs, etc. So there's a capture of a policy there in terms of energy provision and domestically, for which there is policy cover and encouragement, etc., and exceptions to that in appropriate cases, etc. But the quantification or the quantum of the contribution of that to the energy product of the whole of the council area, for example, probably the thinking doesn't quite sit within the LDP context, but certainly sits within our considerations as a broader council. So I don't know if anybody else, David, has any other thoughts on there.
I think it's probably just to bring things back to the fact that this is the evidence report where we're just submitting a resubmission on the basis of what's already been agreed by full council in December. The detail will be something that comes as part of the proposed plan, and as Shona alluded to earlier, we've recognised that there is beyond policy 11 in NPF 4, which is the national policy on energy, there is a need for a local energy policy. So that may be the sort of element that you could factor that in at that stage. But as part of the evidence report, I'm not convinced that we need to have anything further than what we're actually saying in here. But it's certainly recognised, and it's certainly, I would suggest that that's a good opportunity, proposed plan, to feed that in.
Thank you. Councillor Beretti, were you wanting to come back?
Yeah, no, I welcome that analysis, because it is something that no doubt certain individuals will know that I'm going to probably bring up in the future. But yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Slater next, and then followed by Councillor Dempster. But Councillor Slater, please.
That's it. Wasn't plugged in correctly. It is now. Right. It's about care villages, really. The fact is, in Australia and New Zealand, they're very popular. The Australian company, I think it builds them. So would it be possible for the council to maybe contact one of these companies if they're really quite expert at doing this, just to get a feedback to see how they go about it, maybe for the future. Another point is regarding garages and houses being built out of them. Now, over the world, there's approximately 2 million shipping containers lying idle, and there's more and more of these being turned into housing now, and they can turn around quite quickly. So I just wonder if maybe the council could look at that as well, because we're obviously struggling for houses. We need to build houses faster, but if you've got the container, you've got half a house really, instantly. So I would say that. And one other point about solar panels. Solar panels are very good, but they don't work at night. And the problem is each panel only generates about 300 kilowatt an hour in full sun. So you need a lot of panels to do that. And I think you need battery, but battery is very costly. So that's my view on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. I'm not sure that there's a question specifically for the local development plan, and I would maybe suggest that the issue around care villages is taken offline, although we have touched upon it today. Obviously, we do have Jamie here to talk about housing on the next item, but Jamie, do you want to come in and address these points now? And then we can, because obviously we do have the next report to consider as well, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Slater. So, in terms of the care villages proposal, we'll be happy to engage with anybody that we can seek some good learning from. There are some projects close to home, as Councillor Scobie's mentioned, that we can certainly look to pick up, and we are working very actively with, as I mentioned before, with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership. So, we'll certainly take on board that as an action, and it does sit very well with the local housing strategy under the next item. On shipping containers, I did mention as well that we are looking at some innovative approaches in Dumfries and Galloway ourselves in collaboration with South Scotland Enterprise, and shipping containers is one of those. We will hopefully be able to bring some more information back to members through the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, but it's linked to some of our community-led housing developments, where we're working very closely with colleagues at the South Scotland Enterprise as well, and some local farms who are very much interested in construction innovation. Solar panels, again, taking on board David's response as well, it does very much sit in terms of individual housing, and there is reference, quite significant reference, to energy efficiency measures within the local housing strategy document. The provision of solar panels on roofs is something very much supported through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, and taking on board those comments as well from Councillor Slater, the need to identify support for battery storage is something fundamental. We recognise that solar panels do only operate during the day, the daylight, and we are highlighting an action within the local housing strategy around how we promote the provision of more energy efficiency measures. So if there wants to be a further discussion on that under the next item, I'm happy to take that on, but it would be helpful just to come in with those responses at the moment.
Thank you, Jamie, and hopefully that offers some reassurance and some actions for you there, Councillor Slater.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster, please.
Many thanks, Convener. Just a couple of questions. On page 87, second paragraph from the bottom of the page, it talks about the many historic assets and places in the Dumfries and Galloway region are closely connected to topography, including the upland areas of the Galloway Hills, Lowther Hills and Esdale Muir, as well as the smaller hills. The Lowther Hills are part of the wider Southern Uplands, and we have a Southern Upland Way that travels through the region along to the east coast. And I think it would be more appropriate to refer to these hills as the Southern Uplands rather than the Lowther Hills, because they only form part of a wider upland range. And I think it would just benefit the area making reference to Southern Uplands. That's on page 87. On page 91, third paragraph down, we talk about windows and doors in listed buildings and conservation areas. And the paper talks about the guidance will be updated to reflect 2024 amendments to the General Permitted Development Order, as planning permission is no longer required for window replacement in conservation areas if they meet set criteria. It's silent in listed buildings. So does the same arrangement apply to listed buildings, or do listed buildings still require planning consent? And the other thing, I think, is an observation, Convener, more than a request. we all recognise that there are huge improvements now in the quality of plastic windows that offer better energy efficiency and assist the protection of buildings, and might we not be looking at including plastic windows when we're replacing windows in listed buildings, especially when we all know the difficulty there is in getting a quality tradesmen skilled in wooden windows nowadays, especially in old listed buildings. That's just a thought. And the last thing is page 172 of the document. There is a map, and it's in the Dumfries and Galloway spatial strategy. And if you look at the colour code in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a reference to economic regeneration areas, and there are a few indicated on the map. But recently, and SOSI actually refer to this in their response on page 177, recently Kirkconnell and Kilham benefited from an investment from the Borderlands of £5 million. That was to invest in housing and economic development opportunities. So should Kirkconnell and Kilham no feature as part of an economic development area, given the significant investment that's now been introduced into that area, and that would help them draw down, hopefully, further income or investment if it was featured as an economic development area as well as a settlement. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. So I think there's about 4 questions in there, so I will, or three and an observation. I will come to David, first of all. Thank you.
I'll deal with the first one about the windows. That's just really a sort of a statement of fact that there had been a change in national legislation. There hasn't been a change in respect of listed building consent. So if you are doing some works which materially affect the character of that listed building, you will still require listed building consent for installing windows. Not necessarily planning permission, really depends on what it is and where it is. But that's just a situational change. Robert, one of you wanting to take on the map?
Thanks, David, and thanks for your question, Councillor Dempster. The map is the extract from LDP 2, therefore it is the reflection of the priorities that were in the previous plan. And you're absolutely right that the investment and the growth frameworks that are now present within the region are a little bit more sophisticated than presented in the previous local development plan. So you were referring to Kirkconnell Kellohome, which is part of the Borderlands Place programme and has indeed been successful in preparing a place plan and an investment strategy for the settlement. And falling into the same category is our Stranraer, Wigton, Whithorn and Gretna. So there's the opportunity now to start to reflect those changing circumstances and that expansion of some of the investment protocols that are in place now. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a couple of other points, maybe in terms of the hills and the Lowther Hills. I don't know if that was captured in the response.
Oh, yeah, no, we can. We'll take that away and have a look at it, and make that change. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster, does that capture everything, or is there anything else that we've missed?
It does indeed, Convener. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I also have Councillor Drysdale on my list. So Councillor Drysdale, come in, please.
Morning members, and thank you very much for the report. I'm just going to put my camera on hold and read out my comments, if that's okay. Thank you. It was just 3 things, if it's possible. So firstly, the Health and Social Care report is mentioned on page 47, and we all know that the housing crisis is not easily solved, and you'll perhaps be aware that I've been exploring alternative ideas utilising the assets we already have, which has been mentioned in the report quite often, which I do support in the whole. Whilst we'll be discussing this under the next item, I wanted to ask Shona David as to how D&G Council Planning Department can look towards C1 class use and permitted development rights in order to ensure in LDP3 that we're as flexible as possible, so that if we do wish or need to adapt hotels into care villages or step-down units, this can actually be achieved. So that's the first question, Convener. Secondly, I'd like to ask about the strategic road network on page 125 and 128. There's no mention in the report, unless I've missed it, of rest areas on the A75 for HGVs and indeed for other drivers. And it is my firm belief that this needs mentioned as a matter of urgency. So I'm wondering if that can be incorporated into the report, Convener. And lastly, with reference to Stranraer, and I'm being very bold here, with the presentations I've attended with the South of Scotland Destination Alliance, we're talking about some sort of feature that will be potentially built in the future to bring more people in from the States and Canada and Ireland. And I'm just wondering if we can mention that Cairnryan could actually potentially be a global cruise ship destination. And I'm just wondering if we can mention that in the report, because I think it's really one opportunity that needs to be looked at going forward. And I think it's important that we put that in before the gate check. So these are my 3 questions. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor. I will turn to David first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Sorry, could I ask Councillor Drysdale just for clarification of that first question? Did you say something about C1? What was that?
Yeah, thank you, David. It's a good point. So it's my understanding that if we do want to, or indeed have to, as a matter of emergency, convert hotels that are already semi-converted for an ageing population, that the change of use would need to be put in place for a hotel to become either, I'm not talking about old folks home, I'm talking about step-down units or care villages, that planning might be an issue, because it has to be, my understanding is that we would have to look towards a class change. I think hotels have a specific C1 class, is that correct? And if it needs to go to be changed to residential or care purposes, there might be permitted development rights of use. So these are subject to limitations. So we'd have to go through the planning authority to develop the specific requirements. So I'm just checking to see if this report in front of us is flexible enough to be able to do that. We don't want to be held back if it is a case of an emergency care home or a step-down unit that needs to be created at speed. So it was just to get your professional opinion on that, and if we can incorporate it somewhere into the report if we have to. Thank you.
Right, thank you for the clarification. In Scotland, we have a piece of legislation called the Town and Country Planning Scotland Use Classes Order, and that groups certain activities together. So, for example, a hotel is class 7. Hotel and hostels fall into that same grouping. If you have an element of care provided, that's a different use class. It does require planning permission. So that's national legislation, which as an authority, we don't have the power to go and override that. So that's why I was seeking clarification. So I think C1 is English legislation rather than Scottish. There are certain permitted development things granted to go from one use class to another use class, but that isn't one of them. So in short, no, we wouldn't be able to incorporate that, I'm afraid, because that's as part of the evidence report, we certainly can't override national legislation. Stuart would probably jump in for the other part.
Thank you for your question regarding the investment potentials around Stranraer and Cairnryan and the port there, Councillor Drysdale. So I think that also reflects, I think, the point I was making in response to Councillor Dempster's query as well about the sort of the strategic context for economic growth and investment in the region, and there has been, as you'll be aware, some really substantive pieces of thinking done around an investment strategy for the west of the region. Green free ports were very much part of that at a particular point in time. So on the basis of a lot of that groundwork that has been done, we've got a good understanding of the potentials for expansion at Cairnryan, and are in reasonably active dialogue with the ferry operators around that to be able to reflect some of their needs for growth and aspirations for growth, and we will happily be incorporating that into LDP3 as we can and as appropriate to give some certainty around those issues.
Does that address your point, Councillor Drysdale? I'll just come back and check with you.
Yes, to a certain level it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just do a final check because I don't see anybody else on my list. So if members are content, we will move to the recommendations. So we have already agreed to withdraw delegations at 2.1. I think it's fair to say that we have considered the updated evidence report and agree that the report and all the documents referred to therein can be submitted to Scottish Ministers for gate check examination. And 2.3, authorise the interim head of Economy and Development to make minor changes to the evidence report to take account of any late consultation responses, formatting, consistency issues, grammar and spelling errors that may have been missed before submitting for the gate check examination as set out in paragraph 4.8 and 4.9, noting the request and the agreement to share the details with group leaders. So are members happy to agree, consider and authorise? Councillor Ferguson, your hand's up, please.
Just one bit of clarity, please, Convener. At 410 in the report, it's mentioning their report be brought back, update scheme will be brought to a future meeting of the E&I committee. Is that a progress report?
Shona?
Rather than the final report?
Shona.
Yeah, that refers to the development plan scheme that we're required to update at least annually. So it sets out the timetable. So yeah, we're required to do that by March next year. So fingers crossed if we get through gate check this time, it'll allow us to review our timetable. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So moving on to item 4. This is the Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Housing Strategy 2025 to 30 and the report by Interim Head of Economy and Environment. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on work to produce the next local housing strategy for Dumfries and Galloway. It highlights the significant consultation undertaken in development of this corporate document. In addition, the report seeks members' agreement for the 10-year housing supply target and the draft 5-year local housing strategy for 25-30 for submission to Scottish Government, which has been developed in collaboration with key stakeholders. So again, before moving to the detail of the report, given the subject matter, can we first agree to remove delegation from Economy and Infrastructure Committee and Social Work Services Committee so that we may discuss it? Agreed. Thank you, members. So I have Stuart McMillan is still here, as is Jamie Little, our Strategic Housing and Regeneration Team Leader, and they are here to assist with any questions. So I shall just maybe turn to the report authors. Is there anything you wish to add? Nope, not seeing that. So straight to questions. And I've got Councillor Dryburgh first out the box here. So I'll bring you in, please, Councillor Archie Dryburgh.
Thanks very much, Convener. I'm no greyhound, so I'm not coming out any box apart from my own. Can I again come to the recommendations? Agree the 2.3. Agree the leadership arrangements for a strategic housing forum are considered by the Tackling Poverty, Inequality and Housing Subcommittee, and it's talking about paragraph 4.12, where it is recommended that the leadership of this group is reviewed at the next meeting of Tackling Poverty, Equality and Housing to ensure it's appropriately aligned to the current democratic arrangements of the Council. Now, it's my understanding that any strategies should come to full Council as opposed to a subcommittee of it. So I'm just wondering what that actually means, and if it is possible to say agree that the strategic housing policy or local housing strategy comes to the next full Council. I'd just like to say it is a good report, and thanks, Jamie, for it. I would like to have seen more numbers in that, but they've already said that.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. Jamie, do you want to come in on that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dryburgh. So the Strategic Housing Forum is really a consultative group that's been pulled together of some of the key stakeholders, and members have been really keen to be part of that in the past. Since the agreement of the membership of the Strategic Housing Forum from the members' perspective, there has been a number of changes in the democratic arrangements within the council. The chair of the Strategic Housing Forum has previously been the Economy and Infrastructure Committee chair. We have now also put in place this new Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing subcommittee. So it was felt by myself that it would be helpful to ensure that the Strategic Housing Forum was appropriately aligned to that new committee structure, recognising that the forum does not have a decision-making process. It's very much a consultative group that will, once the strategy is agreed, monitor the delivery of the action plan with further reports coming back to the relevant committees.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, Councillor Driver. I've got Councillor Dorward and then Councillor Dempster on my list. So Councillor Dorward first, please.
Thank you for the report. An extremely well written strategy and the reflections on progress since 2018. It's really interesting, but I think one of the things I want to comment on first before I ask a question is the fact that we are being underfunded still by Scottish Government in terms of housing, as are other local authorities, because the Chartered Institute of Housing Scotland, others, have pointed out that the figure of 768 million for the whole of Scotland for 25-26 is still less in real terms than the budget for 23-24. So massive challenges ahead for this local authority in terms of the aspirations that are within the strategy, but it's great. Referring to page 327, 2.5 and page 333, 4.4.3, and I know that councillors have asked questions about housing as part of the previous report, which is what it is, well, shall we say. This is actually about housing, so I'll ask the questions here, which I think are more pertinent personally. But the housing supply target of 460 units per annum is aspirational. Do you have confidence this will be achieved, given the challenges that we have across the region? And bearing in mind the prevailing, and I would say absolutely essential, philosophy of prevention and early intervention, which I believe we should lay across everything that we're doing in the council, especially when we are considering current economic constraints and future-proofing of housing stock. Well, Councillor Scobie has mentioned this, as has Councillor Slater, but does this housing provision, this is a more general ask, include specific quotas for older people, for people with additional needs, persons subject to domestic abuse, and those enmeshed in the justice system who require support? You've done the division, which is fair enough in terms of social housing and marketable housing, but I think, and you did touch on this, Jamie, before, and I referred to page 344 of the report as well from the IGB, their strategic commissioning plan. I'll be working very closely with them now to ensure that we are future-proofing our housing for the demographics that live here, as well as providing more housing at the same time. That costs more money, that's more complex, building houses for specific people with specific needs, but is that part of the process as well? And also for looked after children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Jamie, I'll come to you, please.
Yep. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dorward, for the queries. In terms of the aspirational nature of the housing supply target, it is aspirational. I would certainly agree with that, but it is on the basis of a significant number of evidence sources that we pulled together to inform that aspiration. We recognise that housing is critical to not just providing homes for people, but also providing jobs and supporting some of our economic growth opportunities in the region as well. I mentioned before the South Scotland Housing Action Plan, where we've been working with colleagues from South Scotland Enterprise and Scottish Borders Council to try and identify ways to bring new developers into the region as well, recognising that in recent times the delivery of affordable housing and private housing has been around 50-50, which is obviously something we're trying to reflect appropriately in the housing supply target, a slight shift away from that. But that will rely on us being able to bring more private sector development into the region. So we felt it was really important to be aspirational for the region, recognising that population projections are actually for decline, but the housing need and demand assessment has really taken a view about some of those economic objectives for the region that we really want to support and promote. Members have already alluded to the Borderlands growth deal. So yeah, agree it's aspirational, but it is what we feel has got a strong evidence base behind it. In terms of early intervention, future-proofing, our work with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership, those relationships have really improved over a number of years. I have advised members in reports over a number of years that the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership, the NHS, has obviously had to take more of a focus on dealing with pandemic issues over, since 2020, but now we're starting to get them back on an even keel and getting a bit more of a look at what do we need in the future around our housing. The housing and demand assessment, housing supply targets aren't required for us to break it down into those individual, what's needed for older people specifically, but every project that comes forward through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, we take a significant look at what's the real need and demand in that area, what types of homes do we need to be delivering. The funding is challenging because older people's homes, more accessible homes, homes for anybody who requires some form of specialist provision, does tend to be more expensive, and we are seeking additional support from the Scottish Government on a regular basis. But what the local housing strategy and colleagues from every local authority in Scotland are asking of the Scottish Government is that more autonomy is given to local authorities around how they utilise the funding that's made available. But key to that as well is going to be that we ensure we get a 5-year allocation of funding so that we can make sure we can future plan for the delivery of housing. Unfortunately, the cuts to the budget last year in the Affordable Housing Supply Programme have impacted delivery of the Strategic Housing Investment Plan locally, and we will be doing everything we possibly can to recover from that. But we certainly agree that that 5-year provision of funding for the region will be fundamental to actually delivering our aspirational growth targets.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Dorward, were you wanted to come back in at all?
No, thanks, Jamie. I think I totally agree with the 5-year plan, and I've no issue with aspirational objectives. It's the challenge of making them happen. But thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to come in, and I should maybe declare a statement of connection nationally through Resources spokesperson for COSLA, just to confirm that this is a key area that all local authorities are looking at, and work is being done to lobby Scottish Government in terms of that need for housing investment, and work is ongoing. So I just thought I would add that in if I could. So thank you. Councillor Dempster, I will come to yourself, please.
Thank you, Convener. One very brief question on page 343. Section 1.1 Local Housing Strategy Purpose, bullet point 1, set out a shared understanding of need and demand for all types of housing and for housing services now and in the future. Recently, although fairly recently, Homes for D&G changed their allocations policy. They no longer retain a list of people in housing need or demand. They appear to have a bidding process. And I think that undermines this report that Jamie has brought forward today. This council went to a great deal of trouble to try and get all social landlords to commit to a common housing register so it could be easily interrogated. And that's no longer available, I understand. Therefore, it undermines the work being done in communities trying to bring forward housing developments with evidence that you can't provide because it's no longer readily available. Hopefully, Jamie might be able to respond to that. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dempster. So the move at Homes for D&G has been to a choice-based letting system, whereas in the past it was very much on an allocations basis. It does allow customers to bid for houses, and they will still be allocated on a priority basis. However, as Councillor Dempster has alluded to, that has reduced the evidence we now have in place to look at specific demand in certain areas. And for reassurance to all members, that is something that Wheatley Home South, who lead on the delivery of the Homes for D&G, are aware of and are actively looking at with their IT colleagues. It's a very tricky matter that when it comes to IT is probably not my area of expertise, that's for sure, but we are actively pursuing ways we can put that information back in place. It's always been helpful to present that to members, particularly when we're coming forward with any strategic housing investment plan projects, so there can be assurance we're building homes in the right places. And we will, as soon as we're able to, advise members on any update to that process.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster, hopefully that offers some reassurance.
It does indeed, thank you.
Thank you. So I've got a number of speakers still looking to come in, so I'll just confirm I've got Councillor Scobie, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Jameson and Councillor Lowe, but I will come to yourself first, Councillor Scobie.
Thanks, Chair. Could have perhaps put on record my thanks to Jamie over the years that he's come forward, supported many of the issues that have been raising, and indeed the assiduous way, the empathy he's got for some of the people who are living in these conditions. I just want to place on record my thanks. I'm looking at page 332, and we're looking at 433, and the Scottish Government's guidance state, what they state here. And then I'm relating that back to the 5 priorities. Firstly, I would say, just as Linda has said, it's the lack of resources. And I well remember the meeting we had with the previous Housing Minister in Committee Room 2, and we made the point then that we needed a lot more money to address some of these issues if we're to overcome the crisis, the housing crisis and emergency that we are currently in, when indeed the Council declared that emergency. But I'm looking at these, and particularly preventing and addressing homelessness, and while the priorities may be implicit, there is nothing in the priority to make it explicit in terms of how we're going to tackle homelessness. And I'm looking at this in terms of people presenting as homeless in Stranraer and being offered accommodation in Dumfries or even further afield. That is just totally unacceptable, given the circumstances, family connections, support networks and so forth. And then it's, not through any of the staff who are under severe pressure, but that's the situation we are in. And it's really a priority, as I see it, that while Jimmy may say that it's implicit in some of the priorities, I think we've got to make it explicit how we are tackling the emergency, the homelessness, and accommodation that would be available to them, suitable accommodation by size and other. And then I look again, and it was Arlene Johnson that put in her report that there are some 2,000, maybe more now, people who, both in the public and private sector, who are looking for aids and adaptations. And we then hear from the registered social landlords that they don't have a sufficient monies to provide for the aid and adaptation that the council's OT service, occupational therapy services, recommend, yet there is not enough money to provide for the aid and adaptation that is required. And these people are literally prisoners in their own home, and that I see as a priority if we recognise the figures that were presented by Arlene Johnson in terms of the 2,000 people who are waiting for that aid and adaptation, which has its knock-on effect of delayed discharge, people being unable to get out because their housing is not suitable, and yet there's no monies available for the register or the private sector to tackle that. And indeed, I spoke to Jamie this morning about a case where a private owner has waited since January for a ramp to get in and out, which he can't get out of his house without it. So I would hope that does feature in the forthcoming strategy in terms of a priority. How do we address this? And how do we make representation to the Scottish Government, lobby the Scottish Government for more resources? And that's what's needed, in my opinion, in terms of the housing crisis, if we get out of it, that the Council declared as an emergency. So it's really just these points, Chair, and thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Scobie. Jamie?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Scobie, and thanks for the words as well. In terms of resources, we certainly recognise that's very much similar to the response to Councillor Dole's query about the need for long-term investment to be in place so we can properly plan. The registered social landlords will highlight that they have much more demand for aids and adaptations in their properties than they can genuinely afford to deliver. But we are working very closely with OT services, registered social landlords and through the scheme of assistance and the delivery of the care and repair service as well. And there has been some improvements over the last months or so in terms of delivery, but there is still much more to be done. Would certainly support that request to be looking to identify more resources. The capacity is certainly there to deliver, and the demand is certainly there that needs to be met. It really just does come down to those resources being in place for all parties. In terms of the homelessness, what this council has specifically chosen to do is create a standalone homelessness and housing options strategy. Went through the Communities Committee back in 2023. That's not a requirement that's put in place by the Scottish Government, but this council has felt that there was significant need to put in place a standalone strategy, which is very much supplementary to the local housing strategy as well. So while we haven't specifically got a section within this document on homelessness, that's really on the basis that there is already a strategy in place that we're very closely aligned to. The issues around accommodation in Stranraer and other parts of the region, we are doing what we can to try and alleviate those issues. You'll be aware that there's a large-scale site just near Stranraer that's just come under construction at Leswalt. 56 units of affordable homes there. We do have in place an agreement with Wheatley Home South where 50% of all their allocations will be made to the homelessness service. So we would expect that there's going to be significant improvement in the provision of accommodation for people that really need it. So there's work underway, there's still more to do, but the local housing strategy draft that's in front of members is really setting out what our plans are over the next 5 years to try and alleviate some of those issues. The reference to the numbers of people on aids and adaptations, that was part of our housing need and demand assessment work based on public consultation as well around where those needs were. It is significant, but that's why we're trying to ramp up the delivery of more homes, more suitable homes, but also we do need to try and make sure we're still allowing people to live independently in the homes that they choose to live in as well.
Thank you. I'm seeing nods on that one, so hopefully that answers all those. Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Marshall, I'll come to you next, please.
Thank you. Yeah, it's in relation to 4.4.3 on page 333. It's just the house and supply target, welcome the fact that 460 units. I was looking through the report, but maybe Jamie can help me. How does that compare to, say, the average we were doing each year in the last maybe previous 5 years or 10 years? And also with regards to the Strategic Housing Forum, I can't remember when the last time that met. I don't know if it's something that's been lost in the restructure, but I welcome the fact that it's going to be looked at by the Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee. But in light of housing being one of the priority areas for South Scotland Enterprise, do you envisage a more active role by SOSI working with Dumfries and Galloway Council, for example, a more kind of active role with regards to the Strategic Housing Forum?
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Now, you're testing my memory slightly here because I'm sure it is referred to somewhere within the local housing strategy around the housing supply target delivery over the last 10 years, and from memory it's around 300.
Yeah, it's actually, we've increased it up, so it's actually part of the... Apologies, yeah. Completion rates, we monitor them on an annual basis through the housing land audit, and it was actually included within the evidence report on page 171, shows previous completion rates and how they have been increased over the last 2 years. We've got data up to 22-23, and we're in the process of updating it now. It also within that information shows what we have in terms of overall land supply for housing, and also the portion of that that's considered to be effective. So the housing supply target ties into housing land requirements, so it is all interlinked in that relationship around about the delivery.
Thanks, Shona. In terms of South Scotland Enterprise's role, members will be aware that the Regional Economic Partnership chose 3 key items that they wanted to focus their work on in the most recent strategy: housing, skills and transport. The housing work has progressed at pace, and we now have the South Scotland Housing Action Plan, which has been highlighted to members. It's been developed in collaboration with Scottish Borders Council, South Scotland Enterprise, and some of the construction innovation projects, as referred to under the previous item, are being supported by South Scotland Enterprise. They are working with a number of local firms to try and improve the delivery of homes through some modern methods of construction. So very much see the role of South Scotland Enterprise around those continued community wealth building and working with local SMEs to try and ensure that the construction sector locally is able to support us in the delivery of our housing supply target. In terms of the last meeting, the Strategic Housing Forum, it was held in March. It has been a little bit of time, but obviously the focus has been on getting the local housing strategy reviewed and refined to a point where we can bring it to members today.
Thank you, Jamie. Hopefully that answers all your points, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, and I've seen the housing figures that Shona alluded to as well, so thanks for that.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson, I'll come to yourself, please.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks for the report. It's really, really helpful. I'm referring to page 332. The words key workers is what I'm focusing on. Is there anything that we can do? And forgive me if it's in this paper, because it's quite a big paper. You've got demand for dentists, teachers, social workers, etc. These are all key workers. Often they're employed, especially the teachers, on short-term contracts until they get permanency. And it's really quite difficult for young folk to get affordable accommodation in the area. And we need to attract people into the area for all of these key areas. So that's my first question. The second question is rurality. Agriculture industry, forestry, tourism, these tend to be often rural areas. Taking farming as an example, we're getting larger farms with more people working on them. The accommodation can be quite difficult, and if you're a 17 or 18-year-old doing a modern apprenticeship, if you're a student going to university, you may have halls of residence, etc. Or you may just be able to stay at home, but if you're having to milk cows at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's more difficult. I know it's quite a niche area, but agriculture, forestry, tourism is a big, big thing in this area. So I'm wondering if there's anything already there to try and alleviate some of these issues. I know you can't solve them, but there may be ways to alleviate them. And I read recently that some of the rural housing, because it's small scale, is less attractive to developers, and that might be somewhere where we can encourage local developers to take up these sort of roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Jamie.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Jameson. So key workers is a piece of work that really does feature quite heavily in the local housing strategy draft. We have, again, been working really closely across the South Scotland with colleagues in the Borders and in SOS, but also pulling in the colleagues at the South Scotland Community Housing and Scottish Futures Trust to really try and identify where our particular hotspots are around key worker housing demand. Now we really need to move that into the delivery phase so that we are actually able to provide properties for people. The rurality of some of these issues does cause additional complications. It's very much harder to drive economies of scale, and we feel that the Affordable Housing Supply Programme as it currently stands doesn't really align with us being able to deliver rural properties of that nature. It does push us more towards a focus on large-scale developments on the edge or near existing settlements like Dumfries and Stranraer. What we are trying to do, though, is work really closely with colleagues from across the housing sector, including our local communities, through the delivery of their place plans and their own community-led housing developments, to identify ways that we can try and alleviate that. We've got a number of projects that were agreed back for inclusion in the Strategic Housing Investment Plan back in April that will help us to support delivery of key worker affordable homes. The benefit of taking the approach of going through the community-led approach through the Rural and Islands Housing Fund is that communities are also able to identify what their specific need is. It will not be based on a regional policy. It will be very much what's the localised issues, what are the jobs they need to support, or is it homes for older people? So there is work and train. It does feature very heavily in the local housing strategy. Again, going back to that point of lobbying the Scottish Government for more autonomy around how we use the funding, that's going to be absolutely imperative that we can achieve that. But we're now moving this very much into the delivery of key worker homes right across the region. But we will be taking very much a focus on what's the localised need, what are the communities saying they need in terms of housing.
Thank you. That's really helpful and encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Lowe next on my list, please.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, convener. So my question and comment is all about the independent living section and accessibility, which is something I'm fairly passionate about. So on page 377, it tells us that over 3,200 households in Dumfries and Galloway require a home without stairs. That to me also assumes that they will need a level entry shower and a ramp at a doorway at some point. As a result of our higher than average number of private rentals, which is on page 363, often these homes are not suited for adaptation. They're one-offs, they're olders, they're street front properties where you can't put a ramp. So this puts greater pressure on our RSLs. And even then, many of our older RSL properties are not accessible. And not every bungalow is a mobility suitable property, although they're obviously advertised, can be. I did a search of the word retrofit in this report, and only 3 mentions relate to accessibility, but 17 related to energy provision. So there didn't seem to be much of a focus. So, as Vice Chair of Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee, I'm asking, how can we ensure that every opportunity is taken, noting financial issues, to adapt or retrofit properties to ensure that people either stay in their existing home or are able to move more quickly to a suitable, safer home? The fact is that only 230 households were allocated an accessible home in 3 years. So within this strategy, how can we address it? There are some practical things we can do, and here's a suggestion. Is every single level home within our RSLs is assessed when it becomes empty, and the adaptations are made at that point when it's empty, so the new tenant can stay for longer and not have to move. And given the cost of a house move, that also helps address our tackling poverty provision. So what I'm really asking for, and the question is, how can we be proactive rather than reactive? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Jamie, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Lowe, for the queries and suggestions there. Yeah, obviously, independent living is one of the key strands of the local housing strategy, and something we are very keen to try and support through the provision of new accommodation and also through aids and adaptations to properties. The property makeup in Dumfries and Galloway does add to the challenges. We have a number of older homes designed without the future proofing that you've certainly talked about there. In terms of the pressure on the registered social landlords and accessibility issues, modern homes are being built to different standards, but there are a number of properties that currently aren't suitable for their residents, and we do work very closely with the registered social landlords. One note of caution around the void process for registered social landlords would be they are also working within finite resources, and there would need to be an agreement from them that was something that they could actually do, recognising that the funding they have for that type of work comes from tenants' rents. So they very much have to make sure that they're doing the right thing to deliver value for money. But that's certainly something in terms of an action, I can take that away for a discussion with the registered social landlords. And it will sit very well with our Housing Emergency Action Plan. The intention has been to bring update reports on the action plan back to the Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee. And we can take a particular focus on those adaptations issues if members feel that that's going to be helpful.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Lowe, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, just say I think I'll certainly be looking to do that as Vice Chair, to take that forward and to pick up on that issue. And if it can be noted as an action, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. So I've got various members who are looking to come in. So I've got Councillor Stevenson, followed by Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Slater, and then I'll come back to Councillor Dempster as a second-time speaker. But Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Jamie, for this report. Again, on page 377, we discuss the need for wheelchair housing. So I recently had a case, and I imagine most councillors will have had something quite similar, where someone within a home with stairs was needing wheelchair housing that had 3 bedrooms due to the age of the children. And when I queried it, I was told that there was actually none available, but also that there was none planned. Now, this can't just be a one-off case. This must be something that happens quite regularly. So I was just wondering how much we're pushing for that when we're talking about this strategy. And the other thing you touched on, Jamie, was when we're building, we need to build significant amounts at the one time, but what's really important is we get it right. So it will never sit right with me as part of the Lochside regeneration that we're not going to start at the Max High site when we could build a significant amount of housing in there, but we're going to go in and upset some of the streets and residents that are already settled. So again, it's about getting it right in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Did you want to come in on that?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So, apologies, not familiar with a particular case, but if there are issues like that that do come up and you feel you're not getting a satisfactory answer from registered social landlords, please feel free to raise it with me, and I can pick it up with them. I do engage very regularly with them on some of these matters, and what we'll obviously look to do is try and align that with the delivery of the Strategic Housing Investment Plan. We often will bring forward bespoke developments of properties to meet a specific need through the SHIP. So if there are issues like that, then I'm obviously happy to pick those up for further discussion, particularly if they're advising there's none planned, because we'll do everything to try and resolve that matter. In terms of the Max High site within Lochside, obviously Lochside regeneration is going to be one of the key projects for us around housing in Dumfries. It has significant wider benefits, and we are working really closely with Weekly Home South, the Scottish Government and other colleagues to try and find a way to bring forward the development of Max High sooner. We recognise that there's also a lot of antisocial behaviour on that site, and developing there will offer significant benefits to the community. So that is a piece of work that's very much underway. And as soon as I have an opportunity to provide a fuller update on Max High, I'm hoping to have some news on bringing that one forward sooner. I'll certainly do that through the Economy and Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you, and I'm seeing nods from Councillor Stevenson. Hopefully that answers your concerns. Councillor Ferguson, I'll come to yourself.
Thanks, Convener. Morning, Jamie. Thanks very much. It's an excellent report from, I have to say, a very high-performing team. I'm a wee bit lost in something here. It's at 4.1.2, and thanks, Sean, for flagging this up, because the Strategic Housing Forum was set up under the old Economy and Resources Committee. The delegations were passed to E&I at some other time, and I'm not sure if this is a question for Jamie or Vlad, to be honest, but we've got the slate of outside or appointments to various subcommittees coming to the 2nd of September E&I committee, and that's not on it. So is it slipped between the stones or something? I'm not sure. I stress, there's no aim here to change the membership or anything like that at all. It's just where should it be reporting to? Because the other issue you've got here is if some of the work is going to the subcommittee, quite rightly, because we said that was part of the deal. I suppose what we did in simple terms, Jamie's homework's getting marked twice, because the same reports would be coming to E&I under the delegations. So can we get that checked, please? And if need be, we can get that onto the agenda for the 2nd. As I say, I don't see any need to change the membership of it, but it's just where it should be drawn from. Right? And I'm trying to remember, because I think it was cross, I think, Convener, you're one of the ones, it's on that, yeah, and it was cross-party. So, I mean, I have no reason to change that. I wouldn't wish to change that, but it's just where it reports to.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I think for completeness, we'll come back to that, but I'll maybe just turn to Vlad to see if he's got an easy answer, but we'll obviously make sure that we get the correct governance advice. And yes, you're absolutely correct. I am an existing member of the Housing Forum, which was done on a proportional basis across political groupings. But Vlad, I'll come to yourself just in terms of governance, please.
Thank you, Convener, and obviously happy for Jamie to come in on this as well. We've got a scheme of delegations that have been set out with, including the subcommittee and the overall decision making and principles around that in terms of full council was to delegate certain aspects of that kind of housing element that previously sat with a service committee. So quite a lot of that moved over, and I guess from my understanding of what we're trying to achieve here is to ask full council to decide exactly where that decision making should be. If members are of the view it should be sitting somewhere else, then fair enough, but if the leadership arrangements are for that strategic housing forum are okay to be considered by the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities subcommittee as set up by this full council, then that's where it should remain. So I'm in members' hands as to where you wish it to be, but that's what we're trying to do, is just in essence try and ensure that we've captured it all together. But I don't know if Jamie has anything on that part of it.
No, in terms of Strategic Housing Forum, it's really been a consultative group. They come forward and we discuss the delivery of the action plan. It gives us an opportunity to review and refine how delivery is going. And we have, it has been considered in terms of whether or not it does form an outside body. Obviously, it's arranged and led by the council themselves through my team. And we have in the past had agreement via the committees, the relevant committees, to make sure that we had the correct membership. But as Vlad has said, if members feel that the decision making needs to come through a different route from the Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee, that's very much in members' hands. But the delegations for the Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee as it relates to housing are distinct from the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, in that there is decisions that can be made at the subcommittee and there are decisions that can be referred on to the Economy and Infrastructure Committee.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie, thanks very much. And Vlad, thank you for that. So I'm quite content to actually let this go to the first subcommittee and we can discuss it there in some detail and take it from there and then come back through and give everybody plenty of time to actually really think about it and see where this should sit. It was just the appointments were in a committee that's no longer in existence. Right? So that's my point, yeah. So to make it formal, the appointments formal, we need to bring it back to another committee, I would suggest, but I think that's kind of what Vlad's saying as well.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Yeah, Leader.
Yeah, just sorry to come in on the same point, but there was an invitation from Housing Association over the summer, and I think the cascade of sort of relevant member to attend that would have been the chair of the Strategic Housing Forum. I think it was a Cunningham Housing event nationally. So given that that's one of the things that we might encounter from time to time in terms of an elected member might represent the Strategic Housing Forum on behalf of the council at a national event for a housing provider, that presents a current difficulty, I think. So it might be good that it is bottomed out at the relevant subcommittee, just so that we're clear if there is an event like that and that's the cascade, then we are able to be represented from this council with a respective member of that Strategic Housing Forum. If that can be taken into account, please. Thanks.
I think we need to take this further for further account, noting these points. But Councillor Ferguson, last point.
Okay, just going back to the previous iteration when it was under communities, the vice chair was on that and he represented the forum at national events, and it was an appointment through that process. That's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. we'll take on board all those comments going forward. Councillor Slater, I'm going to come to yourself, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question for Jamie here. How do you define associate, what do you call it, a rental costs, affordable rental costs? How is that done? Is that done with the associations, or is it done through rent costs or other? Maybe if you've any answer to that, thank you.
Hopefully a simple one.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Slater. I will try and keep it as simple as possible. Effectively, the affordable reference means that the properties are targeted at priority groups. The rents are set on the basis of benchmarking from the Scottish Government, and there is a process of consultation for existing properties that the registered social landlords need to go through with their tenants to highlight what services they're going to improve in terms of any rental increases on an annual basis. So it very much varies from property to property. Obviously, newer, more energy efficient properties can be expected to have higher rental costs, whereas some of the older properties that are less energy efficient with higher fuel costs will probably have lower rents. So there's not a standard approach to every single property. It's very much on a case-by-case basis, but there is a framework in place for doing that.
Thank you, Jamie. Hopefully that answers your question. Yep, thank you.
you.
So I don't have any other first-time speakers, but Councillor Dempster, you're looking to come back in, please.
Thanks, Convener. I've raised this before and I wasn't going to raise it, but I feel strongly enough that I should. On page 469, there's a chart and it's about the methodology paper and the 10-year estimated affordable housing supply target. Dumfries HMA includes the whole of Nithsdale from Glencapel to Wanlet Head and Killahome. Given that it's the regional capital and given the scale of developments that are taking place in Dumfries, I believe it should have a standalone set of figures, and so should Nithsdale. That would then allow all the settlements across Nithsdale to better understand what the targets might be and how they can aspire to achieve them. They're simply built into Dumfries, and the region's so large that I don't think that's suitable anymore, and I wonder if there might be an opportunity to separate Dumfries from the remainder of Nithsdale in this and in future reports. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dempster. So the Dumfries housing market area, as Councillor Dempster has alluded to, is vast in terms of the towns that are within there, but it is based on a scientific process where we have evaluated where house sales are coming from, where people move to, where people are working. So there is a basis that's set out in the methodology there around how the housing market areas have been assessed. The Scottish Government have assessed our housing need demand assessment as being robust and credible just back in 2024. The only opportunity to update a housing market area is going to be at the next housing need demand assessment, which we wouldn't be intending on carrying out for around another 3 to 4 years when we come to the point of having to review this current local housing strategy. We can certainly take on board those comments as we go into the next housing need demand assessment, but the housing market areas have been assessed for all 3 housing need demand assessments using that scientific basis, and there has been no change to the housing market areas over that period. Fully appreciate the comments, and it's something we can certainly review as we go through the next process.
Thank you. Hopefully that offers an explanation for you, Councillor Dempster, if not an answer that you're looking for.
Thank you, Convener. That's fine, yes.
Thank you. So I don't see any other hands up online or in the room, and I would just put on my record my thanks to yourself, Jamie, and your team for this really extensive and evidence-based strategy and report. It's a huge amount of work, and also to say thank you for the offer to support individual members if they've got key points that they want to follow up on. So many thanks. Moving to the recommendations, we've already agreed 2.1 to remove delegations, and we're being asked to agree 2.3, 2.5 and 2.6 as detailed in the report. and note 2.2 and 2.4. So are members happy to agree and note the recommendations? Thank you, members. So item 5 is any other business deemed urgent by the chairperson due for a need for a decision. You'll be pleased to know I have no further items of business requiring a decision. However, Councillor Dorward, were you looking to come in?
Thank you, Convener. We didn't get a chance, the Labour Group, to actually offer a note of appreciation to a fellow socialist, really, Councillor Scobie. And if you will indulge me, I would like to spend a couple of minutes in doing that, if that's okay.
The floor is yours for a few moments.
Thank you. From our perspective, new elected members can learn a lot from Willie in terms of getting things done, working with all colleagues to achieve this and sticking to your guns. Also, never chair a meeting because you can't speak as much in debate. And we all know how much Willie is famed for his speeches. And they're very good. But joking aside, as a valued colleague, Willie's socialist principles have always shone through, and his representation of those with little agency and voice and his dedication to the west of the region has been unsurpassed. We'll miss his humour, his occasionally acerbic wit, his stubbornness, his integrity, his motions and amendments, many of them, and his devotion to his constituents and his ward. He must actually hold the record for, and is a genius at, introducing relevant parochial issues into a strategic report. Big shoes to fill indeed. Enjoy your retirement, Willie, and keep the red flag flying even on the bowling green, okay? Thank you. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor. So I think that what a note to end our meeting today. So thank you, everyone. Just to also confirm, there is lunch available. Appreciate there are meetings this afternoon as well for those too. So thank you very much for your attendance today.